In my 14 years as a 3D artist, I've witnessed countless forum debates over which rendering engine is the fastest, and not one credible study that actually compares them.
And that's where hell broke loose. Let's get on done.
He's crazy.
So, Blender Guru. He's a nice person, a beloved person. He has more than 2 million subscribers, and I like his content. I mean, come on. He's the donut guru himself, the donut bender. Unfortunately, in his last video, he had a lot of negative feedback about his video, the fastest render engine. And people start to question his methods. And to be honest, I think he made some mistakes, and I need to address them. So, what did exactly went wrong? Well, let's start by the first assumption that Andrew started with, which is that he used the program with its default settings. Now, this method is wrong for a couple of reasons. The first thing is that in the assumption that a tool should be easy and an artist should not find difficulties in using the tool is wrong in the 3D world. It is wrong with 3D programs because a normal artist would use his brush and paint to paint, but there is a learning curve. So he needs to learn the tools to use them. And the same thing goes with 3D programs. The artist should learn a program, and I don't mean by learning that he should learn the ins and outs of the program and how to program the shaders and all these things, all these technical things. No, absolutely not. What I mean by basic usage is that he should learn the tools that are exposed in the program that he uses. Buttons, the rollouts, the shader nodes, all these simple tools. I mean, come on. If you want to learn Blender or 3D Max or Maya and you want to become a 3D artist, then you must learn these tools. There is a learning curve. You cannot accept that you open Maya suddenly and start making animations, or open 3D Max and start making architectural visualizations with ease. There is a learning curve that you should take, and you should learn at least the basics. You need to learn the basic skills of using the engine, and that's the first assumption that he used, which is for me a wrong assumption. You cannot just take a program, a new program, and you expect that you will have one button which says render, and then it will give you all the good results. The second criteria that he used for this is using noise threshold as a factor for determining the speed of a program, which is an important factor for speed. But turning off features by default would lead to more noise, and a lot of engines cheat in the calculations so they can make less noise, and Cycles is one of them. Corona also is one of them. So to take the defaults and to say that every render engine by its defaults will give me the noise threshold that I'm gonna use to check his speed is also a false assumption. You need to know the program. The third criteria that he didn't talk about, and usually people also don't talk about, which is the philosophy of the program. So every engine has its own weaknesses and strengths, and the reason is that every engine was invented to solve a problem and has its own philosophy of solving this problem. A fourth criteria that nobody also talks about, which is the quality and the beauty of the render engine. And I don't mean by beauty the image that the render engine would give you. What I'm talking about is the quality of the GI calculations and the light calculation that the engine would do. to give you the beauty that you seek. And this by itself would give you the thing that will define Luxcore from Cycles. I'm sure that you have heard of the term, this is a Cycles look, because to be honest, Cycles has its own look that you are used to until you want more and you start looking for other engines. And the reason is that the philosophy and the quality of the calculations that Cycles use are not like other render engines. Cycles was optimized for speed, and he trades accuracy for speed. So you will see a certain look for a Cycles engine that you cannot maybe pinpoint, but you will say this was rendered with Cycles. You will say this was rendered with Corona. You will say this was rendered with Vray, because every render engine has its own ways of dealing with calculations and optimizations, and this is something also nobody talks about. Another simple thing, but I need to say it, not turning options in certain engines and keep them on by default in other engines is also unfair, like keeping the UHD in Corona checked while not checking the GI acceleration in Luxcore is also not a correct way of using a program. And to help me addressing these issues, I would like you to welcome with me my beloved friend Mr. David Attenborough.
Thank you, Anas, for the introduction. My name is David Attenborough, and you're watching Anas FX. So let's start from the beginning. What is a render engine? In simple terms, a render engine is a program that takes images and materials, 3D objects and lighting, and converts them through a lot of calculations to an image that you can see on your screen. Pretty neat, isn't it? Now, not all render engines are created equally. Some of them were optimized for speed, some for quality, and some just for the sake of being there. Here is something usually people don't think about, which is, what is speed in a render engine? Does pressing render and waiting for 5 minutes is speed for you? Is IPR a feature that you consider as an important speed factor? What about the time to create materials? Some engines would give you ready-made materials to choose very quickly and save a lot of time. Are materials one of the speed variables? What about building time?
Operating systems, so just clicking the rendered view in Cycles for the viewport took 32 seconds on Windows and only 24 seconds on Linux. So this is really interesting. This is mainly like the initializing and calculating of BVH, and this happens a lot faster on Linux. It took 32 seconds on Windows and only 24 seconds on Linux.
Is a render engine that renders in 5 minutes but builds the scene in 30 minutes for every frame is faster than an engine that renders in 10 minutes but build in 10 minutes. What about advanced settings? Is a render engine that forces you to dial 50 settings every time you want to optimize your scene and forcing you to spend 2 hours of tinkering so you can render in 5 minutes? Is this faster than an engine that gives you the freedom to enable or disable these advanced settings, and by using the default settings you would get great results in only 20 minutes? So, what do you think speed is? Is choosing a relatively superfast engine with low-quality global illumination solution is much more important to you than choosing a relatively slower render engine that gives you a very high-quality global illumination solution? I will explain the word relatively later, don't worry. I won't leave you in a cave full of skeletons, so you can try making your own way out, killing monsters with an RNG and level design that are so unforgivably hard that would make living on Mars with nothing but your own feces as a fertilizer to grow your own potatoes a luxury experience. Yeah, talking about you dark souls. Anyway, back to our subject after this humongous rant. Here is another question. Is rendering speed really that important? Imagine working on a project for 7 days just to render 10 images using a superfast engine, but with a low-quality global illumination. I bet if you worked on a project for a long time, you would certainly like to render it with the highest quality possible, even if it took you 2 hours to render one image. So is speed really important to you in this very common situation? Speed is very important in the animation field, of course, and every speed optimization counts. But even big companies will not accept to render with less than 8 hours to 24 hours for one image to provide the highest quality for their hard work. Do you believe that speed is not that important to them? You see, every render engine, as Anna said, was created to solve a problem. Let's take Vray for example. Vray was created not to be accurate or scientific, but to be the most feature-oriented engine that gives big companies the features that they need in their production environment. And because it has been there for a very long time, and was adopted by a lot of studios, it is considered the most feature-rich engine. With emphasis on big companies, because without them it would never be as big as it is today. Other render engines were not widely adopted, and that's why they lack the features like Vray, but it's not a bad thing. Because it's more efficient to see what big studios require from a render engine as Vray and then adapt those new features in their development roadmap. Also, some render engines are oriented for big studios, others for normal day-to-day usage. That's why they differ from each other. For example, here is a small list of features that are needed in a production environment. Shader programming, blur and motion blur, OSL support, saving global illumination, optimizing every aspect of a material, including and excluding of lights, GI, shadow and matte, supporting instancing, handling a lot of lights in big scenes, handling huge scenes, supporting different DCCs like plugins for Blender, Max, Maya, Cinema 4D and others, plug-ins compatibility and a lot of other features, and hundreds of other features that would take a lot of time to clear. Now, I would love for every render engine to support all the features, but it is a very difficult task, and that's also what defines one engine from another. How many features does it support? Another important thing to think about is the ease of use of the engine. Some render engines takes this to the extreme, not giving the user any options to change. And some engines take the other extreme of giving all the options on the screen, scaring new users from using the engine, which also affects the program in a very negative way. The best option is to have an advanced checkbox and leave the choice to the user, which will simplify the interface for new users and give advanced users the freedom to adapt those advanced settings in their workflow. The ease of use also includes ready-to-use materials, light presets, ready-made settings for different rendering situations like interiors and exteriors, and even a 3D object database, which is a very welcomed addition in Blender 3.0. What about spectral rendering, which is a great rendering algorithm that allows effects such as BSDF, wavelength dependency, diffraction, or atmosphere to be modeled far more accurately than in color space rendering? In simple terms, spectral rendering is the true unbiased, colors accurate, and in direct illumination accurate rendering by far. But that is a story for another time. At the end, I am not saying that Cycles is bad. Bella is the best of the best. Luxcore Render is better than Redshift. What I am saying is, they all are tools that were created to solve different problems, and every engine is used in its own field. And to assume that a render engine is faster than another just in terms of time spent on rendering is a false assumption. Just like assuming that a rapper is good only by the number of words that he is saying in 1 minute, or saying a CPU is faster than another just by the raw clock speed, or even a channel is better than another by only the number of subscribers to it. There are a lot of small channels on YouTube that provide informative knowledge in a content and quality that is beyond space. But what floats on the surface of YouTube right now is useless information, misleading content, and cash-grabbing personalities who don't care about wasting billions of people's hours for nothing but their own greed. I do believe that Luxcore Render is a rising competitor to Cycles, not in terms of raw speed, because that is not its philosophy, although it does provide a lot of features that accelerates rendering by order of magnitude, but in terms of its superiority on features and quality. Being fast is not everything in a production environment. It's nice to have speed, but without quality or features it is obsolete. But we need to complete the circle of life, from development to testing, to error reporting and features exposing, so we can have a great tool that we call a render engine.